Good evening and welcome to Beaufort County News and Views. I'm Catherine Glover and I'm the director of the Washington-Beaufort County Chamber of Commerce. Speaking tonight with Rob Sands, and he's with the Pamlico Rose Institute. Welcome.
Well, hi. Welcome, too.
I'm glad to have you. Let's talk a little bit. You're CEO and you're chairman of the board of the Pamlico Rose Institute. Give a little bit of history about this organization and why you decided to start it.
Okay, Pamlico Rose Institute for Sustainable Communities is the full name. And we have twin missions. Our twin missions are historic preservation and service to at-risk populations. And specifically, we're concentrating on female veterans for our first project, and our second project will entail housing for disabled American veterans.
Okay.
So those are our twin missions. The idea is the rubric is community sustainability. What we're trying to do is help build community strength and resilience and sustainability. Our focus is on veterans because everybody either knows a veteran or has a veteran in their family. The statistics on veterans coming back from deployment for PTSD, alcohol abuse, and others kinds of conditions are pretty drastic, pretty dramatic. So we're looking at how we can help build the community from inside on the ground, from the ground up.
Sure.
So service to at-risk veteran populations is one key, but the other key is also historic preservation because, like within Washington, North Carolina, there's a very vibrant historic district, but there are certain gaps or parts of the district that bring the whole district down. So what we're trying to do is also sustain and build into those gaps by preserving houses already there, and that is also a strength for community sustainability.
You have a history in sustainable communities. Kind of.
Sort of, yeah. I'm an anthropologist, and
Right.
so in my prior lives, I did work on sport and culture, and then for the last 10 years, I've been working with the Department of Defense on developing and deploying language and culture programs. So in some ways, I have this experience in looking at communities and trying to figure out how to make them better, stronger, more resilient.
And so that's something that obviously you're bringing into this. Why did you decide that you wanted to do this?
We have a very active board of directors. Almost all of us have veteran connections, are veterans who have served in the military. Our staff also has a very high veteran component. So that was one of the aspects I knew that when we brought this together, that was one of the aspects that we really wanted to concentrate on because it's very near and dear to a lot of our hearts.
Sure.
For the historic preservation part, also in a prior life, I was an archaeologist and a cultural resource manager. So those things kind of connected. In some ways, it may be a unique connection, but when you start thinking about how those two things come together to promote community growth and sustainability, it's a little bit more obvious.
So let's go into a little bit about so the organization is formed. You're a 501c3.
Yes, we are.
And that was formed, and you've put together, like you said, a great board of directors who understand why, what, and that sort of thing with all great connections in terms of the history and just what you want to do with this. Talk to me a little bit about the plans of what you want to do.
Well, our initial pilot project is called Rose Haven. And Rose Haven, when it's complete, will be a reintegration home for female veterans that are recovering from substance abuse. So the house that we're using for this is a house on 3rd Street in Washington. It's an old 1892 house, and we're rehabilitating it to the code of the commission of the historic district. And then once we're done, we plan to bring 4 female veterans recovering from substance abuse into the house, develop a program of what we call social resilience, and we can talk about that in just a second.
Okay.
And they will stay there and during the next road of their recovery. In some ways, consider the reintegration home to be the last step before they truly merge back into a community. And the community could be Washington or someplace else. But and we call it Rose Haven, Rose from my mother's favorite flower, and she's the one who seeded a lot of money to start the foundation or the institute that we're engaged in. But Haven as a place, as a non-threatening place for people to come to gather their wits, promote their skills, to be able to work better in the community and then leave.
And that's one piece that you know just from your history and with veterans and things like that is desperately needed.
Yes. The statistics are alarming, and I was just looking this morning to make sure I had some statistics correct in my head, but over 20% of female veterans that served in Iraq and Afghanistan suffer from PTSD. There's a very high correlation between PTSD and substance abuse. So that's a striking number, especially for female veterans who also undergo other issues when they come back from deployment that create or help or create or at least lead to substance abuse. So that's a population that we feel is underrepresented in how people respond to them and how people provide for them. And so we want to fill that gap. The other thing is that we can, if what we're doing in this house turns out to be good, it's a very easy model to export to other communities. Other communities like Washington and the state have historic districts. North Carolina has the 8th largest veteran population in the country. So you're not going to run out of people that you could serve with this. And so by perfecting this model, we're also serving other places in North Carolina.
And we talked earlier, this is obviously an organization that's been near and dear to your heart. You started, you've been part of, you've got a great board of directors also that believes in your mission. Talk to me about, we were talking about Rosehaven, which is one part of this project.
Right.
Or part of this organization of a thing that you want to do. And to go back and describe a little bit about what you're going to do with Rosehaven.
Great. Well, thank you. I understand there may be some tying threads together could be a little bit complex. So the population itself that we're bringing to Rosehaven are female veterans.
Right.
And the female veterans are undergoing recovery from substance abuse, which is a very long journey for anybody, not veterans or non-veterans. What is unique about Rosehaven and how we will help that population is when they get to Rosehaven, they have already gone through treatment. They've already gone through in-residence recovery, a recovery program. So when they get out of that recovery program and they start on their own, that's a very risk-filled period, and not a lot of, what people think that recovery, that rehabilitation within the residence is a very difficult thing. But when they get out on their own, they're cut off from the population that they went through the rehabilitation with, and they're also cut off from other veterans. So what we want to do is bring them to Rosehaven and bring other veterans into the house with them. So they're developing a community of female veterans within that house, right? The other thing is that they oftentimes, when you go through recovery, it's a very inward-focused process. Coming to a community can be very difficult because then you have to transfer what you're doing from building yourself back up to understanding how to interact with others. And that may be a very difficult step for many people with substance abuse. So what we're trying to do at Rosehaven is bring a community together within the house, but we also want to build programs with them to help them integrate better into the community that they're going to have to figure out when they get out eventually anyway. So a unique thing about Rosehaven is that we want to build a healing landscape. And so the healing landscape will be sort of a meditation garden, but it will also be a produce garden. So what we want to do is create this landscape that will provide healing qualities about it, but will also give them things to do. And it's very crucial for people who going through recovery or who have PTSD to be able to start on a task and finish it and gain confidence on it, and then start again and finish it. And so for us, the garden is not only a perfect metaphor, but it's also literally a way that they can produce healing within themselves. And then the garden itself will then provide produce for themselves, but we'll also make produce available to food pantries in Washington.
And the ultimate goal for this is for them to go be in a safe house, Rosehaven, gain the skills, and ultimately go back into society.
Yes, and I don't want for people to think that they're sort of in a balloon by themselves, right, and they're bouncing around. That's not true. All along this path, they've been integrating with community. But this is a really crucial time, I think, for them because establishing relationships with others and organizations in a community can be very difficult, especially if there's trust issues and other issues that may complicate that. So providing them a haven and sort of a structure to be able to do that, I think will be very helpful.
And one thing that also you're doing through this, it's kind of a twofold process that we talked about in the first segment, is that you're also rehabbing a home. Yes.
The specific home we're rehabbing is on, as I said, is on 3rd Street, and it's in a transitional neighborhood. There's a lot of rentals. There's not a lot of single owners in that, and 219 East 3rd Street, which is now, will soon be Rosehaven, sits on an area of that neighborhood that if that house can be brought back to life, it will help that neighborhood considerably in how it looks and how people think about that neighborhood. And we hope that that kind of project can then sort of spread to other areas around that. So it's really interesting. You just plant a seed of rehabilitation in a house, and it sprouts, and it will grow.
And then that's the first piece of the project, and then you've got some great things also that you have envision in the future, which is communities.
Right, and our second pilot project is buying and rehabilitating 4 or 5 houses in a row that need rehabilitation, that are empty or failing, and then rehabilitate those 4 houses, and then put disabled veterans and their families in them. But the interesting thing about this project is it connects with that idea of social resilience, because what we want to do is connect the backyards together, create a green space in the back, have that connect the houses together, and then have that be a passive social support system for the veterans and their families. So it creates sort of a little neighborhood within a neighborhood, but it's not really cut off from the rest of the community. But in some sense, it helps promote that social support network that a lot of veterans who are suffering from emotional or physical disability will benefit from.
And some of the statistics that I know are really, I think some would catch people off guard about when veterans come home.
Yes, but I think you're right. I think the dramatic part of that will catch them off guard. Knowing that people have PTSD is more or less common now. Understanding how that happens, to the effect that it does affect the rest of their lives and other people around them, that can be pretty dramatic.
And let's talk, we've talked a little bit about your vision and the things that you want to see in your board, and everybody wants to see, obviously, for Rosehaven that's coming in. But one thing that you have is an event coming up in May. It's called, I guess, the Healing Vets. Talk to me about that.
It's called the Healing Vets Weekend. And healing is a very big part of getting through the process of overcoming substance abuse and also PTSD and other things that kind of afflict you. Healing means to make oneself whole again. And so there are many ways that veterans and non-veterans alike who are suffering from emotional and physical disability can become whole again. What we want to do is bring attention to how vets can heal. And there are different ways, different alternative strategies for healing: sure. Art, yoga, music, gardening, physical exercise. So what we plan to do for that weekend is to bring in veterans and non-veterans alike to Washington, North Carolina, and then expose them to different kinds of events that help model these alternative strategies for healing. So on May 31st at the Turnage, we're going to have a military veterans art exhibit. So what we're going to do is solicit veteran artists, military veteran artists, to submit their work to the Turnage. We're going to have an exhibit. We're going to have an opening. The community is more than welcome to come down and to support the veterans, but also see the art that they do, that they promote.
Sure.
On June 1st, which is the next day, we're going to have what's called Vets Talk. To us, it's like a TED Talk, only it's a series of talks on healing by experts about how vets can heal, not only experts, but by people who have gone through healing themselves. So that will be at the Turnage, and that will start at 7. And then following that, we're going to have a benefit concert by Squire Red, which is a rhythm and blues band out of Raleigh. A couple of them are veterans, and they're going to come down and play for us for free. And then the very next day is the signature event of that weekend, and it's called A Ride for Rosehaven, Supporting Women Veterans. So what we're going to do is promote that by having 3 bike rides: a 20-miler, a 54-miler, and a century or 103-miler. And veterans and non-veterans alike can come in and ride for Rosehaven that day and have the comradeship of the riders. They can camp on Festival Park, which is the park on the waterfront in downtown Washington, on Friday night, and get up ready to go on the bike ride on Saturday morning. And we're going to squeeze some sunrise yoga in there around 5:50 a.m. for the riders to prepare themselves and for the community to come in and understand how yoga can be a healing strategy as well. And so then the ride will take all day, and then people will go home after that. So it's bringing awareness. The bike ride is a fundraiser for us. But we feel really strongly that being able to bring veterans and non-veterans together to understand some of the issues that veterans go through that will affect not only themselves but the rest of the community. And then by understanding ways that we can reach the veterans and be able to promote healing. That's the big goal for that.
And I'm assuming that's a regional event, because when you're bringing in something for people to learn, it's for everybody to learn, but also veterans to learn ways of healing as well.
Oh yes, by all means. I mean, again, it's to help educate the community and help educate veterans. And I guess veterans are part of the community, so you're going to hit them each way, right? So yeah, it's a local event. We're publicizing throughout the state, even nationally, because we feel that. And I'm pretty sure that a weekend like this, there is no other in the country. Mm-hmm. So by bringing it to Washington, I mean, it helps Washington a lot because it brings people into the city to see how pretty it is and how there's such a giving feel in Washington. So we think that we plan to do this every year in Washington to start this up.
So talk real fast. You've got Rosehaven. Obviously, the bicycle ride is for that. Talk to me about what, this is a process that you're going through to raise funds to obviously get this house up and going and other things. Talk to me about what you need.
So my father used to say, it's not the goal, it's the journey,
sure.
Right? And so in some ways, what we're trying to do is solicit people to come in and be a part of that journey, be a part of the process to build Rosehaven. That becomes a journey after that. So it's really gratifying that a lot of our volunteers who are helping on the rehabilitation of the house and other things are veterans. And so when you bring veterans together with other non-veterans, even in the process of rehabilitating a house, you learn more about each other. And that's a really strong goal of ours, because that then turns around and helps build the community. So for people who want to volunteer for the rehabilitation, painting, and things like that, they can get a hold of us. We have periodic work days that we invite the public to come and be a part of the process, although it's been rather cold these last.
Yeah, sure.
So the work days have been slowed down, but as soon as spring happens, we're gonna start to launch that. We have a newsletter. If they would like to sign up for the newsletter, they can go to our website to do that. And our website is www.pamlicorose, all one word, .org. And we send out frequent emails about the progress of what we're doing. And of course, then the last thing is the Healing Vets Weekend. I mean, I can't stress this enough, that this is not just a goal, but that weekend is a process too. And so we want people to come in and understand the kinds of things that affect our communities and how we can better make them stronger.
Can you give a phone number real fast in case someone wants to volunteer for that weekend?
Sure, it's 805-320-2967.
Great. And thank you for being on.
Well, thank you so much.
We'll see you next time on Beaufort County News and Views.